Hello and what is up everyone, Thunderbob here, and I am checking out some more Diablo 2 Resurrected tonight. Specifically, I am playing the Amazon class, and a Boson build at that. I am going through a lot of high-end builds in single player and testing them out before I move on to Battle.net, kind of determining exactly what build I want to go with. So far, I've got my Mage approaching 90 on Battle.net. I've got Smite Zealot Paladin, who's like 85 and is doing Uber solo at this point, and I've got a Trap Assassin who's entering Hell difficulty, and my next class I think I'm going to do is an Amazon, and for a while I've been thinking I'm going to go with Lightning Fury Amazon, but I want to try out Boazon and just see how it's doing if you really push it pretty hard, and I've heard that they're not amazing unless you get really great gear, and even then they get kind of surpassed by some classes, some builds. So I wanted to put one together. This is single player, but this is kind of what I'm targeting if I make a Boazon online. And I'm still not 100%. I may go with that Lightning Fury. Kind of depends on what I feel like after a couple of runs. But I'm going to show you the build, the gear, the stats, and then we're going to run through and probably do like Diablo, Bale, maybe cows. We'll see how I feel like tonight. First off, this is a Windforce Boazon. The other option is really Faith. If you're going Windforce on your Amazon, you're probably running with Faith on your Merc so that you get Fanaticism and you can hit the highest breakpoints. If you were wearing Faith on your Amazon, you would probably run an Act 2 Merc and like get Pride or something like that. I've got a diadem here with 45 IAS. It's got 3 1540 gems in it basically, and then the faster run walk from the magic on it. Adma Scarab, you could use High Lord's Wrath. You don't need the IAS though with Windforce. I'm already hitting the highest break point, so this gives you amp damage and some nice attack rating bonus. You want as much attack rating as possible. Fortitude for the extra damage. I've got a crazy dual leech ring here. It's gonna be pretty expensive. I don't know if I'll quite get that, but here it's nice. Razor Tail. This plus your Pierce gives you 100% Pierce rate. Raven Frost, Laying of Hands, just that incredible damage to demons. Change, I got CTA. Got these ridiculous charms. It's not feasible to get these online, even one of them, but I'm going to target probably some mid-range charms, but just to go ridiculous here, this is a pretty awesome charm. Online, I might focus more on like Dex over the run walk, but movement speed's pretty nice. And then I've got a couple of these resistance life charms just to fill in some gaps where I'm a little low. Let's see. Merc, of course, Faith, and Ariel's Visage, Fortitude as well. And then we'll look at stats real quick. Just enough strength to use gear, everything else in Dex. 20 magic arrow, 20 guided arrow. Multi-shot, there's not really a point in going above 24 arrows. I actually stopped a little short of there. After that point, it just costs you more mana, so there's a break point where you don't want to put any more points in there. I've basically maxed Penetrate and Critical Strike, and then I've got enough Pierce that with my belt I've got 100%, one and everything else. So that's the basics here. You could move some things around. You want to be a little more defensive, go in the middle tree here. Yeah, if you're not using Razor Tail, you might put a little bit more in Pierce. You could go Strafe if you'd prefer. I always liked multi-shot. But that's the basics of it. And we're going to go ahead and do Chaos Sanctuary. Let's go ahead and... should probably have those on my hotbar, but I don't. Sue me. And what you may notice, even though this build has pretty ridiculous gear, the kill speed, you know, is only okay. And this has pretty ridiculous gear. Like, there's a couple of pieces you could arguably change them out for, but I'm doing you know, pretty close to top-end damage for a Boazon. And unfortunately, it gets surpassed by a lot of other builds and other classes. And I feel like part of this, when Diablo 2 first came out, the Boazon was arguably one of the best farming characters. It was that good. And then when the expansion came out, a lot of the other classes I felt got some kind of love and some tools that the Amazon lacked, at least in the Boazon tree. Like, Lightning Fury was really, really pushed hard, and when Synergies came out, even harder. And the Boazon never really recovered, in my opinion. It's still fun. Like, this is a reasonably good kill speed. Though this is player 1 difficulty. Keep in mind, I have not bumped this up. I mean, look at that. That's pretty awesome. And when you do, like, cows, this is pretty good build for cows. Anywhere high density, basically. Not as good for bosses. Though Guided Arrow is still pretty decent. There was a point where Guided Arrow was amazing when it used to pierce. That was a fun time. And then they took away our fun. I hope that they do actually touch up some of these classes eventually. You know, some of the obviously weaker specs. I don't want them to, like, double them or anything, but, like, taking away the 25% damage reduction that you get from multi-shot, letting Guided Arrow maybe pierce, not infinitely, but at least once would be nice. I didn't hit it. This thing is always bugged. I should check those boots too. They don't. Things like Summoning Druid could definitely use a little bit of love. Things like, you know, how they just nerfed, Firewall. Like, I don't know that Firewall needs to be quite what it was, but I would love for them to modify some of the skills just a little bit. You know, like, maybe, maybe lower the damage slightly, but allow, remove the cooldown and allow it to stack again. Same thing with, like, Druid. I would love... I know that the,
Impossible.
I'll pick it up later. That Windy Druid's pretty awesome, but it's kind of frustrating to play with how long the cooldowns are. I wish they would lower some of the cooldowns on Caster Druids. Just a lot of areas that I think they could make some minor changes and make it a much more enjoyable playstyle. Did I not hit it? Up to buckle my shoe. There it goes. Had some weird anomalies with that. And I'm pretty glass cannon-y here, so I don't want to take any direct shots. I think Gore Riders are actually kind of nice for taking on bosses because of that crushing blow, even though it's halved for ranged. It works pretty well still. Alright, so that's Diablo. We're going to go and do some other things. Okay, so instead of doing Bale, I think I'm going to do cows. This is not really a build I would typically do Bale with. One, because you're probably not running with Enigma. For this build, you're probably going max damage. So I'm going to do, like, areas that I think would be more realistic for this build to run. I think cows is probably one of the best for them. And, like, this area, it's just crazy how much damage you can put out. One multi-shot will usually clear everything on the screen. And that's really where they excel at.
The order welcomes you.
What happens when you don't have any space. Okay. Let's go ahead and do some cows. And they do pretty well here. Like, this is, I think, the area where they probably excel at. Your attacks all pierce, your attacks, don't kill my merc. I need that aura. Forgot to put guided over there. That's how I usually run. Guided on the left. But overall, I'm a little disappointed. This character has pretty ridiculous gear, pretty expensive gear. And I've done videos for, you know, fairly well-spec'd Lightning Fury Amazon as well. And it just did better, even while having gear that costs a fraction of this. Like, you know, your weapon on a Lightning Fury is usually going to be a unique weapon that is not anywhere near as costly. And they just do better at the areas that this build really specializes at high density areas. Makes me definitely think Lightning Fury might be in my future. But I do hope that maybe Blizzard would think about addressing some of these specs that just they don't kind of keep up any longer. It's still a fun build, and like if you're really wanting a Boazon, it can work. And you don't necessarily have to go with this crazy a gear, though in Hell difficulty, it's going to be relatively slow without pretty high-end gear. But it's certainly not like a bad spec. I would just say it's not as competitive if that's what you're looking for. Though if you really push hard, you know, gear-wise, it can still do reasonably well. That Adama scare is pretty nice for the amp damage. There are some mechanical things I found out playing this build and researching it. Something I didn't know was not all item thing, not everything stacks with your multi-shot. So, for example, you've got your crushing blow, your open wounds. Those only carry on the middle two arrows. They don't carry on all of the other arrows. So that may not be as big of a help for multi-shot as it does with your guided arrow, because it's pretty hard to actually target with it. But it also means that if you're using multi-shot, you want to make sure that those middle arrows are hitting an enemy to maximize your damage. Most other things do carry forward, but specifically like crushing blow, open wounds, trying to think what other stats. Critical strike and deadly strike, I think, go on all of them, if I remember correctly. There's a list. I'll see if I can post it, but there's a handful of them that don't work on all of the arrows. I miss the glory days of the overpowered Boazon. I might have to see if I can get an old copy of, like, would that be like 1.06, 07? Yeah, just about cleared cows.
It's locked.
But it's just, as decent as this is, the Javazon just does it with much weaker and easier to get gear, and is still better at it. Same thing with like Blizzard Sorceress, I would say, is arguably better, especially for the level of gear required. the Amazon just doesn't really specialize in anything, and you can't really magic find
It's locked.
either because this gear, you know, you can't swap out items and maintain your damage. So yeah, there's. I definitely think I'm gonna go with Javazon when I go with my Amazon next. And the end goal is to get all 7 characters through Hell difficulty, and hopefully I'll have that done in the next couple months. I'm waiting for the ladder. When the ladder starts, I'm gonna make a hardcore necromancer and I think a druid as well. Fury druid is probably what I'm targeting. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here. If you enjoyed this, I have a ton of other Diablo 2 Resurrected content and a lot of non-Diablo content, new games, new releases, previews, reviews, that kind of thing. If you enjoy what I'm putting together, definitely leave me a comment, like, a subscribe, whatever it is you want to do. I do appreciate you watching, and have a good night, everyone.